Hi, here we go again. William Henshaw here at Constitutional Kook headquarters with some information on recent and ongoing events. And these two are related a lot more than they may look like at first, which are student quote unquote loans and mortgage banksters. And both of these have a lot in common because you get yourself into a lot of debt on both sides. That's almost impossible to overcome given the terms and conditions of the agreement. But the good news is we can prove with the record I have and relevant documentary, relevant admissible evidence that the agreements never existed from day one, and the lenders, quote unquote, damn well knew it. You were fraudulently induced into an agreement where all they had to do was punch a few keystrokes on the keyboard and their computer and put quote unquote money in your account, and they now want 20, 30, maybe even 40 years of your time and labor, your property, to repay the loan, which the U.S. Supreme Court, by the way, has said is impossible to do. You'll learn all that by getting my document packets as a main email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. A lot of information coming, and you'll be absolutely stunned at what you learn studying my documents. But they said it. I mean, the discharge of the obligation, which is what you do with paper currency, it's all it does. The debt is still due. So even if you try to pay it, you can't pay it. And there's a lot of issues like this that they didn't bother to tell you when you signed on to the agreement, which they knew or should have known, being represented by an army full of goddamn attorneys. I mean, they had to know. To get you into an agreement like that, there's no voluntary, knowing, and intelligent waiver of rights, most particularly not the right to trial by jury according to the course of the common law. And we can get around all of the alleged authority to the contrary. You'll learn all about that too. It's stunning. I mean, it's a whole new world out there when you start to learn the truth. Now, to be sure, I didn't get it right away. I was something of a slow learner. It took me 10,000 hours in those musty old stacks of law books back in the day because I started out in the early 80s. And of course, we didn't have internet and all these nice research tools like we do now. But it was better for me. Having read those and studied them, it's how I learned. And boy, have I learned, and to the point where, they can't even come close. I've got a 41-page motion to dismiss that you get my document package, you'll look at it, and it's just a ton of authority against everything this system is doing. And they have the burden of proof to prove jurisdiction and venue of the trial court, which has never been attempted in 5 decades. Because not only can they not do it, an attempt like that will bring to the surface the fact that there isn't any jurisdiction and none of these official actors are acting in any official capacity. What does that do? It makes them personally liable for acts of treason to the Constitution. And this isn't me saying it. It never is. This is the U.S. Supreme Court. And this court, by the way, I think recently has taken an astounding, unprecedented position. And they have our backs here. I mean, when they cited Collins against Virginia in the recent case of Texas v. California, and a little later in the same term, just this past term is just closed, New Hampshire v. Massachusetts, where they denied filing documents by a state and the only court in which the case could be heard. That's a major big deal issue, and it gets a lot better for us. And trust me, your student loan lender, whoever the hell it is, or mortgage banker, will not want to see any of these issues coming because the power we have, particularly as members of the sovereign body politic of the nation and republic, and I think, by the way, that even inhabitants of territories have a lot of the rights that we do. It's a video for another day. But we can beat them, and we get one decision on the record, especially with the 9 farts in Washington, D.C. That's binding precedent from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. And as corrupt as the system is, your lender and or bankster simply cannot afford to take that risk, even if they can get into the court that we filed the action. That's even better. Damn. Although even I'm so good, and if I say it myself, if I have to go in there and file in their corrupt courts, I can beat them. And boy, that's saying something. But it's 5 decades, and it is what it is. I know my subject matter. I know it cold. I can recite a lot of things a cappella, just like I did in my South Carolina felony case, where I stopped the proceedings for 30 seconds of my initial appearance. They never recovered because they had me in there for a felony, practicing law without a license, and I'm the one standing there shackled in a red jail suit. I laughed. And I said, "Excuse me, I don't practice it. I get it right the first time." And it went downhill from there. They never recovered. The local dumbass didn't say 2 words to me the entire time I was there during the course of a vacation as a political prisoner because they didn't know what to do. In effect, what I was saying was making the key argument that I have the crown jewel of my issues. There are no states. And South Carolina, for those of you that don't know, is the cradle of states' rights. Nobody there either had a clue or they were too shocked that someone did have a clue on the other side that they didn't know what to do. Because if there are no states here, these official actors aren't lawfully in positions of power, and that's when they become personally liable. And we can get them, and we probably won't even have to file any court documents to do it. That's how good this is. Yeah, I've got some things in progress now on this, including a couple of my own cases, the South Carolina case being one. And telling them in no uncertain terms, if you force us to file court documents and it becomes public, there are some career ending criminal acts here at the very least, if not multiple acts of treason to the Constitution, for which we're going to get you in front of a federal criminal grand jury so you can explain yourself as to why you did that, especially in a position of honor, profit, and trust in government, and sworn by oath to be bound by this Constitution and the laws enacted in pursuance thereof. That's how it's supposed to work. In an earlier era, it did, and we need to get it back. And that's where, especially us lawful de jure just and Gwyneth's free white state citizens have a peculiarly strong duty to stand up and do it. And at the same time, by the way, make us all work together, not this divide and conquer BS they've been doing for at least 150 years. Because they know, the New York bankers know, and this is the best evidence I think we have that the Constitution still exists. If it didn't, none of this would matter. All this outbreak of anti-Asian American violence, anti-Semitic violence, all these hate crimes, quote unquote, none of which can exist, and I can prove that off the top of my head too. I mean, that's why, and they want people to be, just be in all different camps and not understand that all of us have rights if we just learn about them and learn how to go into court and take care of business if we have to. And you won't have to do that more than a time or two before they get the idea here. Hell, at 40 years here in California, I have not even been able to get into jail here. I've had a few convictions there, now, quote unquote convictions, especially early on in the 80s when I didn't know near as much as I know now. Haven't spent one day in jail as a result of a conviction, quote unquote, aka to the Constitution directed verdict of guilt. Haven't paid one red cent in fees, fines, you name it, because they can't define dollar. And the most recent case, I have my own traffic court BS almost 20 years ago now. I got arrested and actually had to post bail because it was Memorial Day weekend, and my job I knew damn well would fire me if I didn't show up to work. They were looking for any excuse to do it. So only for that reason and under extreme duress and coercion, I did post bail. And as predicted, by the way, fortunately, 5 years later, the company did in fact fire me. That's a story for another video, but I knew damn well they would do it. So anyway, I go in there and I get convicted, quote unquote, despite setting an unopposed record with jurisdictional challenges. And they send me a bill for I forgot now, 250, 300 of those undefined dollars. And I went with my sweetie to the local courthouse, to the clerk of court, and I said, fine, here I am. I've got some rolls of silver quarters here. How many of them will it take to pay the fine? And the clerk took one look at me and went in the back room, came back out and said, we can only accept rolls of silver quarters at face value. And I was prepared for it. I said, fine, sign this document to that effect. And she did. And I sent a copy to the local dumbass, and I said, "Why don't you come after me for a willful failure to pay a fine? Willful failure. Come get me." 19 years later, I'm still waiting because they can't define dollars since the dollar is undefined. And again, this is the U.S. Supreme Court having taken notice of the issue. Learn all of this. Send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. Get my document packets. And you get a lot more than just that. You get a lot of personal backing from me. Just like the Supreme Court has my back, I have yours. Simple. It will take some work. It won't take you 10,000 hours, like I said, it took me. But then the whole thing is to simplify it, and the documents I have do that. Okay, you're not going to get it, in a week or maybe even a month, but when it comes together and you realize, as I did, there are no states. That's Pandora's box, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. So that said, if you want to take care of your student loan and or mortgage, those two in particular, and I have a lot of other uh, issues to deal with down the road too, especially the credit rating system, which nobody knows where the hell it came from or what it does. You'll love this one when I get to this video. But these two in particular, I'm ready, set, and prepared to help here, and we can go after them and perhaps get the records expunged if nothing else, and set an unopposed record while we're doing it. And that's how we beat the bastards with the petition for redress of grievance. They're not going to answer. They never have because they can't. But that violates the oath of office and it denies us not due process. Hell with that. We don't want due process. We want judicial process. And yet we have never been in a judicial court because there aren't any. That's the power of what I do here. And that's why I'll be 73 later in the year. And that's why my life is ahead of me at this age. Astounding. But it is what it is, and I wouldn't change. I paid a heavy price to get where I've gotten to, but it's well worth having done because if I end up either making a difference while I'm still here or setting the path so you can follow me, that's a hell of a legacy to leave. So that said, reminds you again, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. Meanwhile, subscribe, like the videos, tell your friends, get the word out. As soon as we all start working together, Americans, Asians, Africans, and knock off all this BS divide and conquer crap they've been doing for at least 150 years, the quicker we get the bastards off our backs. Thank you.